duty of every man, every just man, to break that law. Thoreau had a friend named Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Ralph Waldo Emerson visited him in jail one night and said, "Henry, what are you doing in there?" And Henry responded to his friend Ralph, "What are you doing out there?" Ezekiel is called to raise a dissent against what is popular, the domination of his time. And it has meaning for us today because in my community, the old preachers used to say this: if you're going to preach, if you're going to walk in this faith, you have to be willing to do it in season and out of season. When it's popular, when it's not, when people are with you, when they are not, when it's politically acceptable, and when it's not. You have to preach anyhow. You have to speak anyhow, and not just where you're comfortable, like at Wild Goose, but you have to be willing to be assigned to dangerous territory. Stand up. And that's in essence what Ezekiel said. God says to Ezekiel, he says, "Son of man, I've got something to say to you." The moment I heard the voice, the Spirit in me, Ezekiel said, "Put me on my feet. Son of man, I'm sending you to a rebellious nation. They've been rebellious from the beginning to the present. They are a hard case. I'm sending you to, they're hardened. But you tell them that this is the message of God. They are defiant, and whether they listen or not, at least they'll know there has been a prophet among them. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them. Yes, they may be a bunch of rebels, but your job is to speak to them. Whether they listen is not your concern. Saying something is not an option. You can't see injustice and say nothing. You can't see exploitation and say nothing. You can't see systemic poverty and say nothing. You can't see an abuse of other human beings, God's creation, because of their race, their creed, or their sexuality, and not say something. You can't watch religion be used as a tool of hate and say nothing. The prophetic call then and now demands that we say something, not based on popularity, not based on whether you're going to be heard, but based on God's initiation and God's summons to speak. It seems as though amidst all the myths and the lies, God demands a contrast. We must engage in the risky business of debate and differing with the powerful forces of our day. Dr. William Turner, one of my great professors at Duke, said, to be born again, to be saved, to be a person of faith, whatever you want to call it, means at its core to have a quarrel with the world. As people of faith, we're not allowed to enter into a depressive silence. We're not allowed to go somewhere and hide and try to create some utopia down here with just us. We're not allowed to walk away from the world and find some place and just allow wrong and injustice to have absolute control over the mic. There must be a dissenting voice in every age. As Walter Wink says, we must name the powers in the face of the powers. Not just name it in comfortable conferences, not just name it where every people agree with us, but we must dare in the face of the power to name it, not for the powers to be destroyed, but in hope that the powers would be transformed and redeemed. But if they don't listen, we are not allowed to check out just because Fox News has the microphone and the money to pay for it. We're not allowed to stand down and retreat. Son of man, son of woman, stand up on your feet is the call of God. You know, think about it. How will the haters know that their hate is wrong unless we raise the word of God's love? Remember how Jesus is described, the Word made flesh. A lot of times folk ask me, well, what do you do? Well, if you aren't talking, that's the first thing you got to do. The first thing is to dare to create a different conversation. How will those who perpetrate injustice know that they are perpetrating injustice if we don't talk about God's justice? How will those engaged in oppression know about deliverance if we don't talk about deliverance? How will those who have engaged in dividing God's family know anything about the beloved community if we don't talk about it? How will people who are doing wrong know they're wrong unless we raise the question of what is right? I had a little different. I love my brothers and sisters in the council of churches. And one day we had a little difference, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not putting them on blast. I'm just saying I struggled with this because one day we were writing a resolution, and everybody wanted to find the best way to taper it down so it didn't offend anybody. How in the heaven can you serve God and not offend somebody? That's impossible. He says, I need a voice that will dissent.